before the stars found their rhythmic places in the velvet sky, and before the tides learned to obey the silver pull of the moon, there was only the vast, echoing void of the beginning, a silent canvas waiting for a master's touch. In this primordial silence, Magu, the great mother and grandmother of all existence, stirred from a cosmic sleep that had lasted for uncounted eons, her consciousness expanding like a ripple across the dark waters of eternity. She was not a being of mere flesh and bone as we understand it, but a titan of pure, radiant energy, her breath forming the swirling mist of the nebulae in her deep, resonant sighs creating the first winds that swept through the emptiness. Her celestial body was so immense that her crown brushed the very ceiling of the heavens, and her feet rested firmly upon the invisible foundation of what would eventually become the physical world we inhabit today. Magu looked upon the infinite emptiness and felt a profound, aching loneliness, a divine longing to see beauty, complexity, and life reflected in the mirror of the universe she was destined to shape. With a single, sweeping movement of her massive arms, she began the arduous labor of creation, weaving the delicate fabric of reality from the raw, chaotic threads of the ancient void. She scooped up the glowing dust of dying stars and molded them with tender precision into the great mountains of the east, her colossal fingers tracing the jagged peaks and hidden valleys of the Baekdu Range. Every deep canyon was but a wrinkle in her ancient palm, and every rushing river was a tear of pure joy shed at the magnificent sight of her work, finally coming to vibrant, breathing fruition. However, the creation of a world is a task of immense spiritual weight, requiring a delicate balance of power and intention that even a goddess must carefully maintain against the pull of the abyss. As she shaped the elegant peninsula of Korea, stretching the land like a long, silk sleeve across the turquoise sea, a dark, discordant resonance began to vibrate from the cooling depths of the earth. Deep within the core of the unfinished world, the heavy remnants of the primal chaos felt their ancient dominion being taken away by Mag's intrusive light and sought to reclaim their silent territory. This chaos did not possess a name or a face, but it had an insatiable hunger, a dark desire to pull every atom of creation back into the silent, cold nothingness from whence it had been summoned. Magu sensed this growing resistance, a shadow creeping beneath the crust, but she was undeterred. For her love for the life she was breathing into existence was far stronger than her fear of the encroaching dark. She reached down with her right hand to smooth the rough, unfinished edges of the southern coast, where the islands were beginning to scatter like white pearls from a broken necklace into the deep. It was in this moment of intense, singular focus that the chaos struck, a concentrated shadow lashing out like a venomous serpent from the cracks of the newly formed earth. To seize the creator, the shadow coiled tightly around Mag's right hand, the very limb that held the sacred blueprint of all living things. From the smallest blade of grass to the most majestic of beasts, a searing pain, colder than the deepest winter and sharper than obsidian, shot through her celestial form, threatening to shatter her essence and return her to the void. The chaos intended to drag the goddess down into the bottomless abyss, using her own creative strength as a tether to undo the beautiful tapestry of the world. Before it could truly begin, Magu realized with terrifying clarity that if she fought to keep her hand, the entire world and all its potential for life would be consumed and destroyed by the ensuing cosmic struggle. With a heart full of divine sorrow and a resolve that shook the very foundations of spacetime, she made a sacrificial choice that would echo through the history of every soul yet to be born. She severed the connection to her own right hand, the source of her direct power, letting it fall away into the swirling mist and chaotic storms of the nascent world far below. As the hand descended through the atmosphere, it transformed, losing its ethereal radiance and taking on the heavy, solid, and enduring form of dark stone and ancient earth. It landed with a force that created the Great Plains, its 5 fingers becoming the 5 sacred pillars, the mountain peaks that held up the sky. During the fragile early days of the world, Magu, now diminished in stature and clutching her wounded arm, retreated to the highest, most secluded peak of the world to recover her strength and watch over her creation from a distance. The lost hand was not forgotten by the land. It became the source of a strange, pulsating magic that seeped into the soil, turning the surrounding valleys into places of perpetual wonder and mystery. Thousands of generations passed, and the first humans began to walk the deep valleys that Magu had carved, building their lives in the shadow of the great stone hand. They spoke in hushed tones of the hand of the mother, a sacred place where the barrier between the mortal realm and the divine world was as thin and translucent as a dragonfly's wing. Among these people was a young man named Juan, a woodcutter with a spirit as restless as the mountain streams and a heart that beat in rhythm with the ancient stories. Juan had grown up listening to the village elders recount the legends of the creator goddess and the terrible sacrifice she had made to protect his ancestors from the primal dark. He often looked at the distant, mist-shrouded peaks of the south and wondered if the goddess still watched them, or if she had faded into the same silence that preceded the world. One evening, while searching for a lost goat near the forbidden ravine during a sudden storm. Juan stumbled upon a hidden cave that glowed with a soft, pulsating blue light. Driven by an ancestral curiosity he could not suppress, he entered the cavern feeling a strange, humming warmth that seemed to emanate from the very heart of the mountain stone. Deep inside the earth, he found a structure that looked like a giant, petrified palm, its surface etched with glowing symbols that moved and shifted like liquid silver under his gaze. He realized with a jolt of both terror and overwhelming awe that he was standing within the palm of Mag's lost hand, the ancient relic of the world's creation. As he reached out a trembling hand to touch the smooth, vibrating wall, a voice resonated in his mind, not as a sound heard by ears, but as a feeling of immense, ancient wisdom. The balance of the world is shifting once more, the voice whispered, carrying the weight of 1,000 years and the sorrow of a mother watching her children struggle. One felt the ground beneath him tremble, but he knew it was not a simple earthquake. It was the heartbeat of the land itself responding to a new, rising threat from the shadows. The chaos that had once tried to consume Magu had not been destroyed. It had only been slumbering in the dark places of the heart, feeding on the growing greed, pride, and anger of men. Thick shadows began to rise from the forgotten crevices of the earth, taking the forms of monstrous creatures that brought a black blight to the crops and a heavy sickness to the villages. The people cried out and prayed to the high gods of the heavens, but the heavens remained silent, for the divine ones were embroiled in their own celestial battles far beyond the clouds. One knew in his soul that he could not simply wait for a miracle to happen. He had been guided to this cave because he was chosen by the mountain to act as a bridge. Within the deepest crease of the stone palm, he discovered a small glowing seed, a concentrated drop of Mag's original essence that had remained trapped and preserved in the stone. "Take this spark of life," the voice commanded with a tone of urgent authority, "and plant it where the shadow is darkest, for only the mother's light can heal what is truly broken." Juan took the seed, which felt as heavy as a mountain in his palm but as light as a summer feather in his heart, and stepped back out into the rapidly darkening world. The journey back was fraught with peril, as the shadows recognized the pure light he carried and sought to extinguish both the seed and the bearer at every treacherous turn. He traveled through the black forest, where the ancient trees groaned with the twisted voices of the lost, and over the frozen river that had not known the sun for a century. His feet were bloodied by the sharp stones, and his clothes were reduced to tatters by the thorns. But the memory of the goddess's ancient sacrifice kept his spirit moving forward. He finally reached the epicenter of the corruption, a place where a great, jagged black tower had erupted from the earth, pulsing with the chaotic energy of the void. This was the source of the modern world's decay, a gateway through which the ancient, hungry chaos intended to pour back into reality and reclaim the peninsula. One approached the tower with the seed held high, but his path was blocked by a wall of solidified darkness that no mortal blade or physical strength could ever hope to pierce. He looked at the glowing seed in his hand and realized with a heavy heart that planting it would require more than just earth. It would require him to give up his own life force. In that moment of absolute clarity, he understood the true meaning of Mag's legend. It was not about the possession of power, but about the willingness to surrender it for others. He knelt at the base of the shadow wall and pressed the seed into the cold, dead earth, closing his eyes and pouring every ounce of his spirit into the dry, thirsty ground. For a single, agonizing heartbeat, there was a profound and terrifying silence, a pause in the very rhythm of the universe as two opposing forces met. Then a sprout of pure, blinding white light erupted from the soil, growing with a magnificent speed that defied all natural laws and shattered the darkness. It was not a tree that grew, but a glowing manifestation of the goddess's hand, rising up from the earth to grasp the black tower and crush it into harmless, gray dust. The light expanded in a great wave, washing over the entire land and dissolving the shadows back into the nothingness from which they had crept. Juan fell back onto the grass, his strength completely spent and his vision fading into a soft white blur as the world around him returned to its natural, vibrant colors. But he was not left alone in the silence. A tall, radiant figure appeared beside him, her presence filling the air with the sweet scent of pine needles and mountain wildflowers. It was Magu herself, her form no longer a distant, terrifying titan, but a gentle and grandmotherly guardian whose deep eyes held the wisdom of the stars. She looked down at the young man with a smile that contained the warmth of 1,000 summers, and the pride of a creator seeing her masterpiece defended. With her remaining hand, she reached out and touched his brow, and the crushing fatigue and biting pain vanished instantly, replaced by a peace that passed all human understanding. "You have returned to the earth what was lost to the sky," she said, her voice sounding like the soft shimming of silver bells in a mountain breeze. The lost hand in the cave, though still made of ancient stone, was now vibrant with new life, covered in thick moss and rare flowers, becoming a permanent sanctuary for all. Magu did not take the hand back into the high heavens with her. She left it as a permanent gift, a reminder to all mortals that the divine is always rooted in the soil. Juan returned to his village as a hero, but he was no longer just a woodcutter. He became the first high guardian of the sacred hand, a lineage that would last for ages. He taught the people that the earth was not an object to be conquered or exploited, but a living, breathing part of their own ancestors' bodies and their children's souls. The mythology of Korea grew and flourished around the central truth, weaving the tales of Magu into the very fabric of their daily rituals and cultural identity. They saw her grace in the majestic shape of the mountains, heard her laughter in the crashing of the waves, and felt her steady pulse in the fertility of the rice fields. But stories have a strange way of changing and thinning as the centuries roll by, and the clear memory of the goddess began to fade into the gray fog of history. Modern cities rose with their cold towers of steel and glass, and the ancient, glowing caves were forgotten by those who preferred the artificial glow of electric lights. Yet, the land itself does not forget its creator, and the stone hand of Magu still rests quietly beneath the many layers of time, waiting for the heart that remembers. Sometimes, when the moon is perfectly full and the mountain air is still, travelers near the old southern peaks report seeing a faint, pulsating blue glow in the distance. They say it is the lingering light of the Great Mother, searching the world for those who still value the old ways and understand the true cost of sacrifice. The moral of Mag's story is not found in the scale of her immense power, but in her divine choice to let go of a part of herself so that the whole might survive. It is a timeless lesson about the deep interconnectedness of all living things, showing how a single act of mortal courage can ripple through the fabric of the ages. Korean folklore is uniquely rich with such tales, where the landscape itself is a living character with its own history, its own heart, and its own ancient emotions. To truly understand the Korean spirit, one must first learn to understand the mountains, for they are the very bones and structure of the goddess who made them. To understand the deep rivers that cut through the land, one must understand her tears, which carry the salt and wisdom of the beginning to the very end. Magu remains a potent symbol of the enduring feminine power that nurtures, sustains, and protects. Even when she chooses to remain hidden from the modern eye, she is known by many names: the Halmin of Jeju Island, the grandmother who piled the stones to create the peaks, and the eternal weaver of the rain clouds. Her lost hand serves as a powerful metaphor for the parts of ourselves we must sometimes give away, so that our children might inhabit a world of light. In the face of our complex modern challenges, the legend of Magu calls us back to a simpler path of radical respect for the natural world and each other. It reminds us with every sunrise that every stone has a secret story, and every forest has an ancient soul that deserves to be heard and protected. As one once did in the darkness of the cave, we are all invited to look for the light in the shadows and to plant the seeds of renewal in our own time. The journey of the goddess is the ultimate journey of life itself, moving gracefully from the chaos of the beginning to the order of a shared existence. Even though her physical hand was lost to the earth, her spiritual touch remains visible on every leaf, every stone, and every breath of wind we experience. We are the lucky inheritors of her divine labor, the temporary inhabitants of the elegant landscape she stretched so carefully across the eastern sea. Let us not be the careless generation that forgets the massive weight of the mountains, or the spiritual depth of the valleys that gave us birth. Instead, let us carry the bright flame of this mythology into the uncertain future, ensuring that Mag's ancient sacrifice was not in vain but a foundation. The Great Mother still watches from the high places, her head among the distant stars and her heart buried deep in the sacred soil of the peninsula. And perhaps, when the world has finally learned the lessons of the hand, it will become divine once more, rising from the earth to heal the fractured sky. Until that day, the legend lives on in the rhythmic whisper of the bamboo groves and the morning mist that clings to the surface of the Han River. It lives on in the incredible resilience and warmth of the people who call this beautiful, rugged land their home through every storm. Most importantly, it lives in you. Every time you choose a path of kindness over greed and choose the labor of creation over the ease of destruction. For in the end, we are all carefully shaped by the hands of those who came before us, a mixture of the human struggle and the divine spark. As the sun sets behind the Baekdu peaks, remember the mother who gave her strength so that you might find your own voice in the silence. This concludes our deep journey into the tale of Magu, the grandmother of the world, and her eternal, unbreakable bond with the land of the morning calm. Please comment, like, share, and subscribe to Storycraft Studio for more immersive journeys into the heart of global mythology and ancient legends.